All right, so today we're going to be talking about a story that picked up a little bit of momentum over the weekend, at least on the website side of things. I didn't really see many, if any, people talking about this as far as YouTube is concerned. Maybe Flanders over there at Newswave covered it today. I'm not sure. I'm not watching 20 minutes of you, pal. You're lucky if you get 2 minutes out of me in real life. But with this situation, obviously we're talking about Nintendo, and it kind of paints them in a bit of a negative light. So a lot of Nintendo YouTube channels probably aren't going to cover this because they don't want to upset people. I don't really care because I'm not a Nintendo YouTuber. Of course, I'm not talking about Donkey Kong Country Returns HD being $60, even though that should be the real scandal. And I don't want to hear any nonsense about, oh, well, it's how they value the IP. It's how they value the brand. Okay, so you're going to tell me that they value this game that originally released for $50 on the Wii, for $40 on the 3DS with additional content. Now they value this at $60. However, a game featuring both Mario and Donkey Kong released at $50 that arguably had more work done to it. Don't tell me no brand recognition. Mario is always bigger than Donkey Kong. Just admit that there's no rhyme or reason to it. Ugh. But no, we're not talking about that today. We're actually talking about a situation involving Nintendo not giving people credit. Now, you might remember about a year ago or so, we actually heard some things about this when it came to Metroid Prime Remastered. Now, that game came out to massive critical affair and massive, fanfare. It didn't really sell all that great because people don't buy Metroid games, but it was an awesome game. One of my favorite games in recent memory for the Switch, just because of how good it looked. But when you looked at the credits of the game, a lot of people that worked on the original Metroid Prime were actually not credited in the remastered edition because it seemed like they just primarily focused on the people who worked on the remastered edition. Now, it's a situation where a lot of people took to the internet and were yelling about it and complaining about it, primarily people who worked on the original Metroid Prime game. And I can understand the frustration with it, but however, you are still credited on the original game. This is the remastered edition. You didn't really do anything to sort of change it, but it is going off of your original work. So I don't really know where I stand on that. It's a tough situation. It's kind of like a damned if you do, damned if you don't sort of thing. So I can understand the frustrations, maybe not quite to the level that some people had them that worked on the original game, but I do think that it is within merit because of the fact that, without the base game, you don't have the remastered game. But this is a situation involving something that is a little bit more of a taboo topic. So we're going to be looking at My Nintendo News is right above this. It was originally done by Game Developer. I like the way My Nintendo News formatted it, so we're going to be looking at it from this place. But I will have a link to Game Developer in the description box down below. Nintendo has failed to credit external translators who worked on major first-party games. So right then and there, translators, that's something that's been a bit of a hot button issue lately. Translators, Western translators, potentially changing things from the original game instead of just translating it. Now, I kind of took a deep dive into this. I actually talked to a translator who gave me some information on how translations work. As far as I know, they do have to be approved by the original people involved with the source material. So meaning that if Nintendo of America decides to change something drastically, Nintendo of Japan has to sign off on that sort of thing. And it's like that for primarily any region. Now, could things have potentially changed? Could things have slipped through the cracks? I can't really say. I can't say that definitively. I could see it potentially happening, but that's just based on the information that I've gotten. But translators, they're kind of in a bit of a hot spot right now because a lot of them, at least the perception is, they like to put things of their own personal beliefs within the translations and potentially change things. So basically, games industry website Game Developer has produced an investigative report on Nintendo, which reveals that external translators who have worked on major key Nintendo franchises have been refused credits and locked into decade-long NDAs by Nintendo. The site has spoken to multiple translators who wish to remain anonymous. I've seen a lot of people like, oh, well, why do they want to be anonymous? Read right here, stupid ass. NDA. Do not know what that means. Non-disclosure agreement. You can't say anything. You are under NDA. That bothers me when people don't use their brains. who state that the Kyoto-based company has failed to credit them multiple times on franchises ranging from The Legend of Zelda to Animal Crossing for their work, which has taken months to translate. It seems Nintendo has issued crediting external contractors and not those who work internally at Nintendo. Two translation companies which work on Nintendo projects but seem to be ignored by Nintendo in the credits for their games are LocalSoft and Keywords. It should be noted that this sadly remains an issue across the industry, but has been improving slightly as of late. So then we get into the statements given by these people. I kind of accept miscrediting as part of the business, but that doesn't make it right or fair or right. The fact that these companies are not able to give any reasonable explanation for omitting external translators and even developers from their credits is proof of this, I think. Professionally, it's hard to tell how much of this has impacted me. It's entirely possible that more translation agencies would have approached me if my name was out there in all these big blockbuster Nintendo games, but who knows? And that brings up an interesting point because, you know, if you're a translator on something like that's your work. That's your body of work. And if you're not able to say, I worked on this game, what does your body of work actually show? Like, what have you done within the industry if you can't say I worked on this because of an NDA signing? Like, it's a very strange practice here. It continues. It is Nintendo's policy to not list the name of translators from external agencies in their game credits, which also forbids us from listing those titles on our CVs. If you take a look at the credits for Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door, for instance, you will notice that only 6 people were credited for localizing a full title that's available in 8 languages. In my experience, a game like this would normally be localized by a team of about 25 translators. Some languages are skipped over completely, like they magically got added to the game. For games like Animal Crossing or Breath of the Wild, you don't really notice that 15 or 20 translators are not in the credits, as there are all the other names from their in-house translators, which is why Nintendo's policy of miscrediting might have flown under the radar. But almost every big title that Nintendo releases which uses external translators actually fails to credit translators. Now, it's a weird thing. There is an email that came out basically saying that there's a standard duration of 10 years prohibiting them from discussing or promoting their work within these NDAs. Now, you might say to yourself, okay, well, why are these people signing these NDAs if they want to get credit for their work? Which is kind of a bizarre situation to say because, like, yes, they are signing the NDA, but that doesn't necessarily make the non-disclosure agreement right. Like, what's the rhyme or reason for the NDA existing in the first place? Oh, yeah, I worked on this game. If you work on any sort of thing that you want to get credit for, if it's your main source of income, if it's essentially your job, you want to be able to credit yourself as working on this project. It does seem like Game Developer actually vetted this source as well that was giving this information, and the fact that they were able to see this 10-year NDA agreement that really is a predatory agreement in and of itself just kind of goes to show you that this probably is a situation that's happening, especially when, you know, you take the Paper Mario situation, for instance. Like, there was more than 6 people that worked on the translation of that, especially when it's in 8 languages. So there was less people than languages that worked on translating this. Like, that makes absolutely no sense. And you know, I guess we don't know necessarily the rhyme or the reason as to why the NDA exists, but it's not like it can't be changed. You know, if it's a scummy thing, if it's something that's predatory, if it's something that is, you know, arguably hurting the workers that have worked on these games and they can't give themselves credit for working on them, like, I think it's just something that makes no sense. And people will be quick to defend Nintendo, and that's fine. But think about it from this sort of situation. Think about it from a different perspective. What if it was you who was not able to put credit for something that they worked on for years in order to translate on your job resume? And this was like your main source of income, or this was at least a part of your income. Like, people want to be credited for the stuff that they have worked on, good or bad. You know, people are always going to disagree with you at the end of the day. You know, not everything is kumbaya in life, but I feel like it's just a weird thing that shouldn't exist, but evidently it does exist. But what's the point of it existing? Who is it protecting? Who is it helping? because it's not helping Nintendo, because now you just have a situation, a controversy looming over this. It's not helping the worker because they're unable to put this as a source of something that they have worked on in the past, so that an upcoming company or another company can look at it and be like, oh, well, you've done this before. You've worked on these projects before. You know how to handle bigger AAA titles from mainline competitors and mainline companies. I don't know. It's a very strange situation, and I don't think it's anything that necessarily would have a definitive answer that we would be able to get, because it's just what Nintendo does. Why do they do it? I don't know. I don't. I guess you would have to ask an ex-translator who's outside of the 10-year NDA to be like, hey, why did you sign the NDA? Or why did the NDA exist? Who was it there to protect? Who was it there to help? Because I don't get it. It just seems like a predatory thing that could easily be changed, so people could be like, hey, I worked on this. This is something that I did. So if you want to hire me for something else, you can. I don't know. It's just weird to me. Honestly, I think the Donkey Kong Country Returns HD thing is a way bigger scandal, because that actually impacts me. But it was something that I wanted to talk about. I'm just kidding, by the way. It was something that I wanted to talk about. So give me your thoughts in the comments section down below. Is there any sort of logical rhyme or reason as to why Nintendo would do this? If you work in the industry, have you ever heard of something like this? Is this standard practice? And if it is standard practice, why does it exist? Because I don't see the benefit for anyone involved. And as always, guys, thank you for checking out this video. If you're new to the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button, like, comment, share, hit the bell as well. And as always, I'll catch you guys on the next video. Later.